Well, good morning again, because the first cock-up of the day. The first cock-up of the day. And I forgot to switch the microphone on. So all you saw was my lips moving. And it signals the sort of day that it is. It's quite dour outside. The nice weather has left us for the moment, and we'll look at the weather forecast in a minute to see when it's coming back, if it's ever coming back. I sometimes begin to doubt whether, in fact, we're ever going to see any of this sun again. What I started to say when you saw my lips moving was my mood this morning fits the dour nature of the weather and of the environment generally. And if I may say so, the political environment, which is dominating all our lives at the moment, is particularly depressing. We had on Friday a rather pleasant young man who is standing for the Lib Dems here, James McCleary, and he gladdened my heart in as much as, if promises from politicians can be believed, or saying that he approved of what I think was a golden era locally, not because it was the Lib Dems who had the MP. Lib Dems are another political party. One is no better than the other. But we had Norman Baker as an MP who believed in not only making his mark in Westminster, which he did, but also being a good constituency MP. He looked after the complaints and concerns of his constituents. He did an excellent job. And James McCleary says that he believes in that, and that would be his style if he's returned to power. Now, what do the others say? The Reform candidate is fairly impressive, fairly practical. But I doubt if there will be a swing sufficiently large from the Tories to Reform to give him much chance of taking a seat in Westminster. What do the Conservatives say? Yes, we'd love to come on Mirador television and state our case, but since then, deathly silence. No response at all. So we don't know what their stand is and what we believe is the key issue. And immigration and pollution and so on and so on. Yes, of course, they're all terribly important issues. But for a local MP, how he treats or doesn't treat his local constituents is really what it should be all about. So we have no idea what the Conservative stance would be. But if it is going to be more of the same of the past 4 or 5 years, then it's not very impressive. The Greens declined to come on. Labour never responded. So in other words, the no-hopers are just wasting money and cutting down trees to push stuff through your letterbox in support of the national image, I suppose. And the independent lady, we have no idea. We have no idea where she is or what she does or how to get in touch with her or... So, out of what we consider to be the three major contenders, two look as if they will look after local issues, and one is going to dish up more of the same. At least it gives you, if you want to accept that issue as being important, it gives you a clear-cut direction, clear water between each of the candidates. So when you go to the polls on Thursday, while many national issues will be at stake, if you want to put local approach into the mix, there you are, you've got it. But the interesting thing is that nationally, or internationally, well, let's say nationally first, the country, for whatever reason, and probably because of bungled administration by the Tories, who managed to slit their own throats, when you have a palace revolution and you get rid of the king, make sure you know who you're going to replace it with. Boris may not have been perfect, but when they got rid of him, they were jubilant of what they were going to do. And basically, it was look after their own back pockets. And with some disdain, they thought the electorate wouldn't give them any trouble. Well, the electorate is giving them trouble, and they don't know how to handle it. But primarily, the UK is swinging to the left. And it's swinging to the left just at the same time as Europe is swinging to the right. There are now a number of EU countries with what would be broadly classified as right-wing governments, conservative governments with a little c. Here, it looks as if we're going to have a Labour administration, which, one way or another, is left to centre. And in France, Mr. Macron has been totally humiliated. His governing party has been forced into third place, and the lead, quite a substantial lead, is taken by Marine Le Pen, whom our national media insists on calling extremists, far right. Now, certainly her father was, but the word we have from our man in Normandy, who is a pretty astute guy, does his research, follows carefully, has no axe to grind, says that in fact Marine Le Pen has done a lot to bring her party into central politics, centre-right, but more than acceptable to anybody except the British media, who insists upon calling them extremists or far right. But then it just shows how the standard of our media has dropped with the standard of our political sector. So on this particular morning, getting out of bed was bad enough because the sheets are nice and warm. It was bad enough. Coming into work was a bit rough. And once I was here, I'm afraid my Parkinson's, which had been threatening all weekend to get out of hand, decided to play up. So I've not had a comfortable morning so far. That's why you're not seeing the usual beam on my face. I don't indulge in self-pity, by the way. I have Parkinson's and that's it. I handle it. I try to beat it. I kick it. I scream at it. I shout at it. But mainly, what I do publicly is try to make people aware that this disease is as debilitating and as awkward and sometimes as painful and often as inconvenient as any other disease. But is far less well known. So unless people like me with a disease talk about it, how are you going to know? You know about cancer, you know about heart, you know about leukemia and blood and diabetes, but not about Parkinson's. And I can tell you, it makes life very, very miserable. The trouble is that a whole host of professionals, supposedly in the health service, don't know either. I'm not talking about doctors and nurses. I'm talking about the people who run the social welfare departments, the departments that try or say they provide care. I've nothing against the on-the-ground activists, people that install rails, that actually look after you manually. Certainly the hospital, the ambulance drivers or teams now, they have an excellent. Not talking about them at all. I'm talking about the Jobsworths, the rubber stampers, the form fillers. They only have one thing that is important to them, and that's filling out the bloody forms. It's not just Parkinson's, it's just about everything. But they are not a bit interested in what it is that they're filling forms out for. Not a bit. They're only interested in making sure that the form is filled out properly. And that where they can recoup a little bit of money, the invoice is sent. And they do it with little compassion. And so I readily use the word victim. And when I see our leaders, our politicians, stomping around, talking about the NHS and what they're going to do for it, and how many people were treated or weren't treated, or how full A&E is, or how many people are on gurneys in the corridors. It makes me shudder, because they really have no idea. They have no idea of the sort of thing that is putting those victims into the gurneys in the first place. None whatsoever. It is just a number, a form, a term, sometimes a code. And when I hear our politicians saying what they can do and what they can't do and so on and so forth, the first thing is, why not all make sure that every MP in Westminster, everyone from the Prime Minister on down, takes a humanitarian course and perhaps a psychology course and tries to understand the things that they have been charged with looking after, because they don't at the moment. Not one of them. They do not. And if we're going to have see change throughout our system, that's where it's got to start, at the top. The top people understanding and not getting so unhappy if their free lunches are taken away, or one of their 10 bars is closed. Subsidized bars, I may say. Our MPs have got to start doing the job instead of looking after themselves and pampering themselves and making sure that, yes, it's hard work on the hustings on the streets, trying to dig up votes. But the sort of rewards that are handed out at the moment are not the sort of rewards that are commensurate with what they go through to get to where they are. There's a whole rethink needed. And you'll get people who will say, oh, yes, Keith, you're absolutely right. And in the new parliament, we will. In in the new parliament, they'll still be talking about it as a new parliament in 4 years' time. And they're starting to think about a new election. We need a strong opposition. We're not going to get it. Not unless there is a vital change of thinking and strategy and belief in the rump Conservative Party that is left behind after this election. Now, I'm talking as if the disaster that's predicted does take place. Politics is a funny business. People do change their minds at the last minute. But it doesn't seem as if there is going to be any lifeline for the present government come Thursday. Let's talk about happier things, because there was a lifeline last night when England took on Slovakia. Now, there's a lot not to cheer about. Their performance in the main part of the match was a little more spirited, but certainly not up to the international standards that are required to win a contest of this sort. They did manage to contain Slovakia to one goal, a one-goal lead. Right throughout the match, 90 minutes worth, and 4 minutes and 50 seconds of the 5 minutes extra time, when England scored a spectacular goal to take the match into extra time. A fairy tale ending? Well, yes, because within the first minute of extra time, they scored the winning goal. And managed to hang on to that lead until the final whistle. So what everybody was expecting to be disaster and all gearing up for today's papers turned out to be something of a miracle triumph. And England live to carry on and play Switzerland on Saturday. But if you take the face of two nations, Slovakia is the divided part of the old Czechoslovakia. There is Slovakia and the Czech Republic. And Slovakia is the poorer part. It's the rural part. It is not big on industry. And yet it came up with a team who played together, played as a team, which is what I've argued for a long time, is forget your individual players. If people are playing as a team, they can achieve miracles. And in fact, they almost did. I mean, it hadn't have been for the last minute bit of wizardry by Harry Kane, it would have stayed a controversial state of affairs. I must say, doubt was cast in my mind about Gareth Southgate, whom I admire. And football shows the fickle nature of, we tend to talk about the electorate or the fan base or whatever in dismissive terms. Yeah, they don't know anything, do they? And they can be fickle. Hero last week is a villain this next. And so it was building to Gareth Southgate, who came within inches of winning all sorts of things when England football was on its knees. Was so much a hero that his contract kept on being extended until this one, where then suddenly everybody was calling for his head. He's a thinker, he's a strategist. Perhaps his time has come. But you would have thought there would have been some gratitude for what he's done for English football. No, not a bit of it. Not a bit of it. We got to the Americas, where in the United States in sport there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser. There are no draws. Gareth was going to become a victim of that culture seeping into the British way of life. Oh, don't misunderstand, of course. I believe in winners and losers. But I also believe in a job well done. And gratitude for that job, no matter what the result. And he is somebody that really should have the gratitude of the nation. Not the bile which has been heaped on him because we're not playing very well at the moment. We have days, you have days, when you're off the pace for a whole variety of reasons. I'm off the pace this morning because my Parkinson's is playing up. You undoubtedly have got other issues. Perhaps you broke your boiled egg at the wrong end. Or whatever. But the English team obviously having a bit of a bad time at the moment. Happens. It doesn't mean to say that I wanted to take the doctor out and shoot him. But that's exactly what happens in sport. And it's sad, really. Because people who avidly watch sport would call themselves sportsmen, but demonstrate very little of what we consider to be the qualities that a sportsman like. I better give you the weather, hadn't I? As long as we're together, never mind the weather, it's 8:30. Yes, 8:30 exactly. So here's the weather for today. It's going to hit 19 degrees. It's warm enough. It's not a problem. There's going to be light cloud and a moderate breeze. So we could see a bit of sun as the day goes by. We're not going to see any rain, which is good news. And let's see. Yes, the top temperature of 19 is going to hit at about 1 o'clock today. and stick around until 4 o'clock. So a very warm and pleasant afternoon. Yes. I was watching Harrison Ford in A Clear and Present Danger the other night. And I'm tempted to use the phrase a warm and pleasant something or other to describe what we're seeing at the moment. But what about the rest of the week? Tuesday is going to be 1 degree warmer, but cloudy. Wednesday, temperature is going to drop to 17 degrees. It's going to be cloudy and rainy. Thursday, the sun will come back, but with a bit of scattered cloud. The temperature will go back up to 19. How about Friday? Friday, let's stay at 19. Cloudy, some sun. And next weekend, cloudy with some sun. The temperature staying around 19. So it's not going to be unpleasant this coming week, but it's not going to be full sunshine. Not by a long chalk. I was afraid. Right. Let's go to the unpleasant stuff now. Make sure I'm still there, yes. The hat's still perched. Yes. The pub is still empty. Yes, except for me. Ooh. Wonderful. Wonderful. Here's my medicine for my dried out mouth. A chocolate bar. You don't see this in mainstream TV. The announcer eating a chocolate bar while announcing. Ooh. Sacrilege, they be sacked. Not here. We wouldn't do anything so crass. Papers. The overall assessment of the front pages is the French right humiliates Macron. And Saved by the Bell. We start off with the Times. It reminds us that Wimbledon starts today. Wimbledon lovers who aren't necessarily sports fans get lost now for 2 weeks as they watch men and women and a mixture batting a ball backwards and forwards on a piece of green to try and outmatch an opponent. And they love it. And those there get strawberries and cream. Ooh. There is a banner headline. Sunak turns his fire on Farage in a battle for the undecided voters, which means Sunak is now, instead of bad-mouthing Starmer, is going to bad-mouth Farage. So we're in for more. You did, they did, he did. Instead of explaining to us what the Tories would do if we did give them a second vote of confidence, the same as we did with the footy last night, if they promised to do better. But the main headline is, the French right humiliates Macron. The front pages are dominated by the French election, along with images of England's triumphant footballers. Emmanuel Macron, that's the French president, has been humiliated by the French right, as his party were reduced to third place in the first round of the country's parliamentary elections. Marine Le Pen's far-right party, National Rally, hailed an unprecedented triumph on Sunday. That's where journalism starts to lose the plot. Commentators in France say Le Pen's party is far more moderate now and is not far right. But we can't help but tab it, because we don't like her much. Because she did follow for a while some of her father's policies, which were far right. But the French have gone for centre right. And that's what Marine Le Pen is. The paper also previews a speech. It says that Rishi Sunak will give today, turning his fire on Nigel Farage in a battle for the undecided voters. Well, there we go. There we go. No, it puts the two key issues in a nutshell. The Daily Telegraph, Le Pen, I helped out Macron. The Daily Telegraph reports that Mr. Macron's decision to call a snap election appears to have spectacularly backfired. It carries National Rally leaders Marina, it says Marie, but it sounds Marina, Le Pen's quote, that she has wiped out Macron after exit polls suggested her party won 34% of the vote. Elsewhere, the paper writes that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will tell voters on Monday that Putin is hoping for a Labour victory. The Prime Minister told the Telegraph that the UK's support of Ukraine means Russia does not want us to be re-elected. That means the Conservatives. It also has a photograph of the winning goal being scored by Jude Bellingham in the 94th minute of last night's match against Slovakia. The Financial Times, Le Pen's far-right defeats Macron in the first round of the French snap election. And there's a picture of Marine Le Pen. But there we go again. A respectable paper like the Financial Times, far right. Have they looked at her policies? Have they looked at her manifesto? Of course they haven't. Of course they haven't. Nowadays, a lot of journalists go for it, but everybody knows. Rather sad, because it was a good paper at one time. The Financial Times leads with the French snap election and says that the far right, you see there it goes there, will be at the heart of the government if Ms. Le Pen wins the second and final round on the 7th of July. The paper also reports that in the United States, Democrats have lined up to defend President Joe Biden after a poll showed 72% of registered voters did not think Biden should be running for president after his disastrous debate last week. The Guardian. Labour can stem populist threat by improving lives, says Starmer. Back in the UK, The Guardian's front page features an exclusive interview with Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, who vows his party would work to restore faith in politics if they win the election. Sir Keir told the paper he would bring an end to divisive and toxic cultures and the wars between both parties. Yeah, good luck for that. Daily Mail. As Tories warn voters they face buyer's remorse if they give Starmer a supermajority, Sunak issues a rallying cry. Don't lock in Labour for a generation. The Prime Minister has issued the cry, says the Daily Mail, as it also previews a speech he will give today. The paper says he will warn disaffected Tory voters that they risk locking in a Labour government for a generation. He also warns that voters only have 4 days to save Britain from a Labour government. Well, you had 4 years, Rishi. Don't blame the electorate. A bit late to do that. What comes next? The Eye. It has a photo of the footy in the top of the paper, saved by the Bellingham. Jude Bellingham being the scorer. But its main headline is the UK is heading for stagnation after election. Both Labour and the Tories have been told that. And they've been told by economists that the UK is heading for stagnation after the election. Both Sunak and Sir Keir are failing to offer a serious plan to grow the United Kingdom economy, economists told the paper. So there you are. Politicians' claims directly contradict the experts. Mind you, the experts have been wrong too. The Sun. Again, Saved by the Bell. No clever headlines this time, just Saved by the Bell. Saved by the Bell is the headline in The Sun, alongside a full-page picture of Jude Bellingham's equaliser goal in the 95th minute, which brought England back from the dead. After a second goal from captain Harry Kane, England beat Slovakia with a 2-1 win. Metro. England 2, Slovakia 1. Slower the moon, it says play on words. Slower the moon. Paper leads with the win at the Euros against Slovakia. Its report also includes some of the criticism of the game, calling it the win an unconvincing performance. The Mirror. Fans put through hell. England keep the dream alive. Just. The Mirror says that England suffered a near humiliation by Slovakia, and fans were put through hell. A picture of missing teenager Jay Slater with his mother Debbie is also on the front page, as she says she will not give up trying to find her son. Spanish police have said they were calling off the search. The Express. Kemi. My heart breaks when the Tories turn to reform. Well, that serves you right, Kemi. You could have done a lot about it a long time ago, but you didn't. Back to football, the Daily Express features a picture of some England fans looking tense while watching the match, with the headline, "Relaxing Sunday? Of course not. You're watching England." In politics, Kemi Berdenak said her heart breaks when Conservatives tell her they intend to vote for reform. The Star. Picture of Jude Bellingham kissing Harry Kane's forehead. Harry scored the winner. Bellingham saves us, then Harry wins it. Way Jude, it says. Yay, Jude, writes the Daily Star, praising the 21-year-old player for saving England with a last-minute goal. Well, there you go. There you go. It's 10-2. Bit of medicine. Now, I'm afraid that today in politics is going to go back to the old name calling, smearing, not much positive. And it is worrying that economists, who are invariably wrong, but they do analyze what's going on in the economy, say it's not likely to grow. Of course, neither party has a credible growth plan. But just in a small district that we cover, Lewis, the only growth plan that is obvious here in governance is identify a project, get some government funding, start the project, and boast about it. And if it goes wrong, it ain't our fault, Gov. There is no credible growth thinking in politics at all. It's all reactive. And believe me, having had informal chats, politicians here are not interested in proactive stuff. That's dangerous. If it goes wrong, it makes them look like failures. The fact is, some of the wisest men in history have written you cannot experience the joy of success if you haven't experienced the heartbreak of failure. But they're afraid that it'll undermine their vote, undermine their popularity if they go for anything that's innovative. So actually, although it's looking a little better, the Lewis economy, microeconomy, doesn't really have much of a plan. Well, there's a thing called a Lewis plan, yeah. Deals with housing and a variety of things, and the national park, and yes, I mean, not knocking it necessarily, but only as far as it goes. There's no thought about bringing back an identity to the town and making our development of the economy and its prosperity the heart of its strategic plan. That doesn't work. Anyway, people are bereft of ideas. More of the same. No, the world is changing. I recognize that. And some of the ideas that I would have would be old-fashioned and fuddy-duddy. I understand that. But, it is leadership and enthusiasm that actually carries the day in society, in sport, in economics, you name it. It's leadership that gets things done, and listening to ideas and making the talking shop consider various things and come up with wild ideas. It doesn't. There are people so devoid of imagination, it's just hard to believe. And yet there are leaders. Oh, dearie, dearie, dearie me. Dearie, 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 dearie me. It is just not good enough. Well, that's a rough idea of what's going on in that big, big world out there. As we prepare in another week for more trauma in the United States, will Biden do it or won't he? Would Trump win anyway, or wouldn't he? Is Putin ready to launch another attack on Ukraine? Is the Middle East hotting up, calming down, getting into a neutral situation where not much is happening? But here at home, of course, can Macron come back in the second round of the French parliamentary elections? Or is Marina Le Pen right to be triumphant? Because there is no question that, generally speaking, a whole host of other nations, key nations too, not itsy-bitsy things of no consequence, in key nations, the governance has swung to the right. Here at home, what are we going to be left with after July the 4th? Well, we put our trust in individuals in Westminster, in both parties, and they helped in the main contribute to the situation that we've got now. A threat of wipeout. And my appeal would not be added to Sunak's or anybody else's, but our society, our governance system, depends upon a vibrant opposition, a strong opposition party, as well as a strong government. And if there is no opposition, then it doesn't matter whether it's a strong government, a weak government, or no government at all. It will head off into the bushes and do all sorts of things in an uncontrolled way and leave us all gasping in its wake. So when you think of voting or not voting, do bear that in mind. I'll be back at about another 10 minutes with a little look at a couple of things. And then at 10, we will have Harry Atherton to give us a view not only on the French election, but on what's happening here at home. So for the moment, I am going to say toodle pip. And why not? Still a lot of puffy white cloud, but a bit of sun coming through. It's not going to be a bad day. Not going to be a bad day at all. Let's say bye-bye.
Thank you.